And Bob is one of the researchers from Center for a Livable Future. He has extensive expertise in public policy, knowledge of agriculture, environmental, and health issues, which brought him to CLF. Does that sound right, Bob?
Yes.
It does, and he is the director of their food system policy.
And I am the director of food system policy at the Johns Hopkins Center for a Livable Future. We were founded in 1996 by Dr. Bob Lawrence and Dr. Polly Walker to study the problems associated or that occur at the intersection of food production, public health, and the environment. We've been getting close to our 25th year of working on food system issues with a particular emphasis on the problems, public health and environmental problems caused by large animal operations. From 2005 to 2008, I was the director of the Pew Commission on Industrial Farm Animal Production. Our number one public health, or number one environmental recommendation was phasing out and eliminating liquid waste management systems. But what we broadly said were that large-scale animal operations, intensive animal operations, represented an unacceptable level of threat to public health, an unacceptable level of damage to the environment, were harmful to the animals housed in the systems, and depressed economic activity in the communities they're located in. Since we're a research center, is provide public opinion research for advocates. We initiated the Food Citizen Project, which is our ongoing public opinion research project. The CAFO poll, the Concentrated Animal Feeding Operation poll, was our fourth one. We then did a deep dive in Maryland, looking at poultry production and people's attitudes about poultry production. While people understood the importance of the poultry industry to the economy of Maryland, they wanted it to be regulated. They didn't want there to be public health problems with air emissions and environmental problems because of the over-application of waste. Of all the talk about moratoriums around the country, I think this is the third year, I believe, for the Iowa effort. CLF was one of a cast of thousands, really, working with Senator Booker's office to develop his national moratorium legislation. We decided we would do a nationwide poll on attitudes about a moratorium on concentrated animal feeding operations, not only on establishing new ones, but on the expansion of existing ones, because in North Carolina they had a moratorium a few years ago, I think it was 2007, that said no new CAFOs, no new swine CAFOs, but they grandfathered in existing ones to expand, and they didn't prohibit other species CAFOs coming in. So it's been a meaningless moratorium. So we looked at, our poll was a national poll of 1,000 respondents, with an extra 400 in Iowa and an extra 400 in North Carolina, because we wanted to really understand Iowans' attitudes about a proposed moratorium and North Carolinians' attitudes about what we considered a failed moratorium. And we did the poll last December. What we found, 83% of all respondents said it was important or very important. 76% of Democrats said so, 87% of independents, and 88% of Republicans. We asked also people's attitudes about, how they view the industry. They got pretty good marks the industry did on creating jobs and an important part of the local economy. 76% of the people agreed with that. Producing mass quantities of food and keeping the cost of food down, 72% agreed with that. But interestingly enough, when people said large companies care more about profits than regular people, 56% of the people responded to that message. And when they were asked contribute a significant amount to water pollution in the area, 51% said they agreed with that. So those are a couple of I think, arguments and messages. And I believe that the moratorium campaign going on in Iowa is messaging right on the money, right with the right topics and message. As you may know, Iowa has many large industrial hog and swine operations, often called concentrated animal feeding operations. The state is also home to 23 million hogs, Last year, a proposal was put forward in the Iowa legislature to increase oversight of these CAFOs and to place a moratorium on ban on the construction of new CAFOs and the expansion of existing CAFOs. Interestingly, 53% of all respondents said they supported that for Iowa, when only 41% said they supported it for a national ban. Democrats in Iowa, 77% said they supported a moratorium in Iowa, again, compared to the 50% nationally. 49% of independents supported it in Iowa versus 44% nationally. And the number of Republicans opposing, was kind of weird. 35% of Republicans supported a moratorium in Iowa and 63% opposed it. When it gets close to home, they do want more oversight, less growth, and more regulation. Again, women, older voters, and urban residents are initially more supportive of a ban. We asked it a little different way. The question was, how important is it that this moratorium or ban on the construction of new CAFOs and the expansion of existing CAFOs is passed in the Iowa legislature? Very important, somewhat important, a little important, or not important at all. And 63% total respondents in Iowa said it was somewhat or very important. That's very strong. Only 34% said little important or not at all. So that's a 29-point differential, which is a really strong split among all respondents. Interestingly, it gets bigger when you go to Democrats and independents. 81% of Democrats said it was very important or somewhat important to pass the moratorium in Iowa. Only 17% said it was not important, of little importance or not important at all. So, again, that's a really strong differential, 64 percentage points. When people get more information about CAFOs, that they become more supportive of a limit on their growth or their expansion. The more information people have, the more supportive they are of limits. In all voters, like I said, it's 24% increase, 70% among Democrats, 60% among independents. The easy thing, or the bottom line to say, is you guys are really on the right track in pursuing the matrix update and water quality and tightening the matrix requirements. Democrats, it was even greater, 84% in favor of increasing to 66%, only 11% opposed, 73% of independents in favor, 19% opposed. Even among Republicans, 69% of respondents favored increasing that up to 66%, with only 28% opposing. 90% of Democrats said they support bringing CAFOs bill before 2002 under the criteria, only 9% opposed. 72% of independents supported, 22% opposed. And this is very interesting too, 64% of Republicans supported it and only 22% opposed. So that's a 42% difference. So clearly that's a winning message across the board. You know, there's widespread support for tougher standards, and it only changes slightly among the different groups. So it's still women, older voters, urban voters, but it's really, I think what struck me is people understand the importance of the swine industry to Iowa, but your messaging about water quality is right on the mark. It has strong bipartisan support. It's interesting that the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention have determined that these operations, one of the things we stated in the resolutions, that these operations are a risk to public health and the environment. A couple of things we cited was the 64% of antibiotics, medically important antibiotics used in the country are used in CAFOs to compensate for overcrowding and poor environment. Attention paid to it. I think that, you know, everybody across all lines, ages, political parties, incomes, understands how important swine production is the economy of Iowa. So I think a message wouldn't be to, necessarily shut them down. We need to regulate these to make sure they're not damaging water, land, and our public health.